Hey everybody, my name is Al Nicoletti. I'm an attorney here in Florida, and welcome to the Al Nicoletti Show, where I bring on real estate super investors, rising rock stars, movers and shakers, and leaders of clubs in the community that educate, entertain, and inspire all things Florida real estate on how you can take your company to the next level. On my show, I have such a very special guest. He means so much to me. It's amazing when you take two guys that were from Miami that moved to Jacksonville, somehow connect and hit it off really well. And we love connecting all the time. I met Pablo Gonzalez 2 years ago through the Yellowbird Connect community. Since then, when we met, we had so much to connect on. And since that time, we've both blossomed in our careers and what we're doing. And I love watching Pablo with his huge content game. He is the host of the Chief Executive Connector podcast. And he's also the co-host with Greg Cohen from JWB on the Not Your Average Investor Show. You can find all of this stuff on iTunes and Spotify. We'll make sure we post the links throughout the whole video, this whole podcast. But I have a lot of things, great things to say about Pablo. If it weren't for Pablo, I wouldn't even be doing this podcast right now. And we'll dive into a story, but I do want to tell the story before I bring him on because I see him smiling backstage. But how this even all started was Pablo is a huge content creator. He's a super connector. So super connector meaning he can connect with a lot of people. And when you need that one person, you can go to Pablo and he says, I got a guy, I got a girl, I got somebody for this. I got somebody to help you out. He networks like a beast. He goes to conferences, he goes to webinars, he goes to seminars and virtual and real in-person conferences. And I know he's so happy for the in-person conferences. But Pablo is that super connector and he's a content creator. He loves making content because he wants to put out information and things that are of value to people. I still see him smiling back there. I know, because he's amazing at what he does. He's got this whole podcast, and what he's done for the real estate community is amazing. I want to dive in on all of this stuff. The whole even the studio. I got my studio because of somebody that Pablo knew. So he has some great stuff he's going to share. And on the episode, we're going to talk about how to network your way to the inner circle of real estate investing groups when you know nothing, zero about real estate. We got to hear about that. And the ultimate marketing move for your investing business, the Relationship Flywheel. I got to hear about this. This is something Pablo's been really pushing a lot lately. He loves the Relationship Flywheel, and we have to hear about it. And this is really unique, right? Because my whole show has been about Florida real estate. And you want to up your game. If you want to up your game in the whole content game, you got to hear what Pablo says, all about content creation, repurposing of content, because I had no idea what repurposing meant. When he told me the first time, I was like, what does that mean? And he showed me, and it made a whole lot of sense. And Pablo's outlook on the Jacksonville market as a non-expert that plays an expert on TV. Huge. And of course, the new hot topic. It's funny. When I had the Hansons on, we brought up crypto a little bit, but after the show, people were like, we wanted to hear more about crypto. So I talked to Pablo and he's like, hey man, I'm at this conference right now in Miami for crypto. And I'm like, well, we got to talk about this on the show. So he wants to talk about crypto in the community and his hot take on crypto closely tied to the future of community creation. And he's got hot takes on it and talking about what the buddy coin is and the coin that drives a movement and a community. So without further ado, here we have Pablo Gonzalez, the super connector, the amazing content creator. Hey man, welcome to the show. I love having you on every time. Thanks for being here, man.
Al, I'm like a proud daddy watching his son just be the stud of the T-ball league and just knock out home run after home run, bro. Watching you make content fills my heart with a type of joy that I can't even describe outside of parenthood, but I've never had children. So you're the closest thing I got, Al.
I love it, man. I appreciate that. I mean, look, how it all started, and we'll share this before we dive in. Really, how it all started was when I was on your podcast and we were talking about a whole bunch of things with networking and speaking. And I remember halfway, you're like, you know what? You should, if you did this, if you try to interview with these people, this thing could take off. So before you dive in, special thanks to you. This is you, me being here. Thank you for inspiring me to get this thing going. I love it. And I love what's happening. So we have to hear all about it. Pablo, Who are you? Tell us about how you even got into the content creation site, the
Yeah.
content creating, and how it catapulted you into real estate.
Sure. First of all, Al, I've given that advice to a 1 billion people. You're the guy that has taken the most and the best action on that advice. So kudos to you, bro. I love watching your show, man. I think you've become a content monster. You win the Pablo Content Award so far, lifetime. So, anyways, so so what got me into all this, man? Listen, I've always been somebody that is really, really driven by connecting with people, feeling like I belong and feeling like other people belong. And in my early 30s, when I moved back to Miami from my time in California and I started my first business as a green building consultant, I also concurrently got really involved with nonprofit groups. And I started forming young professional groups for charities. First started with Habitat for Humanity down there. And that led me on this whole like parallel tract of personal development outside of my career that taught me to be a skilled networker, taught me to be a public speaker, taught me to value serving others as a way to connect and really open up my eyes to what it is to make connections with people, what it is. I guess I've always how you describe me. I've always really thought highly of the guy that has a guy. And I always wanted to be that persona, right? Like I always seemed to be a valuable person in society. And I thought that my skill set bode well for that. So I wanted to sharpen that skill set as much as I could, and I did it through nonprofits. And then when I got to Jacksonville, I arrived as a very highly skilled networker that had been a part of community creation and economic development and had, done well in my been on a top 20 under 40. And the moment I got here, I came here for a startup company where I wanted to prove my community creation for business development thesis at. I thought I got a good chance at it and I did it in about a year, but the partnership wasn't right. So then I started over from zero. And the first group that I got turned on to, I mean, I had dabbled in a couple of tech groups because I was in the tech space when I first got here. But Whitney Ritchie, super connector, my idol, she told me, she's like, come to this Yellowbird group. You're going to like this. And the moment that I walked into the Yellowbird events, I felt I felt the feeling of kindred spirits in the sense that these guys, Pat and Kyle, were, without them knowing, really pushing for exactly what I'm all about, right? Which is this community creation for business development thing. The long-term vision of if you can serve as the stage, right? As the place where people go to meet people, to be seen, to connect through you, to get put on. They created that atmosphere there. So I just went all in with it, man. And I saw that they were working on something in a way that I believed was good, and I decided to just get really involved, right? I didn't know, outside of a 15-year career in construction, I didn't know much about real estate. Definitely didn't know about investing in real estate. Definitely didn't know about Jacksonville and the different neighborhoods and the performance of the real estate market here and what's going on in downtown and all that stuff. I just showed up wanting to, as somebody introducing myself as a professional networker and offering to be a steward of sorts for people to get to know each other within the room, be a social lubricator, man. And people saw enough value in that Pat and Kyle asked me to be an official Yellowbird ambassador. They had me on the podcast early on. When I went on their podcast, and Cody, who was their marketing director at that time, took some awesome pictures of me on their set. And they sent me these pictures of me on set. And I was like, I'm making these my profile pictures. It looks like I'm on a freaking radio show or like I'm being interviewed on TV. And that's when I realized there's this like really easy trick, which is if you make content for other people, they will share your content, you know? And I saw that as the next iteration after really formulating my thoughts around networking and how to network in a room face to face and becoming a speaker on that. My next big aha moment was, content is the absolute magnifier and scale to whatever you can do in actual networking and hand-to-hand networking. And I started very deliberately taking the approach that I had of how to become a connector person to person, and I started applying that to modern content strategies. And that's, led me to uncover what we talked about, right? Like the first time you and I got together was after a Yellowbird event. We went to grab lunch at Delicombe. You were telling me something. I was talking about content. You're like, you know what, man? Content, I just started speaking on stages and I fucking crush it on stages. And when people see me on stage, I'm the fucking man. Next time they see me, I'm like, yes, you're right. And your next iteration will be when you start making content, the same thing is going to happen. And you're like, yeah, I'm going to speak. And then, fast forward to the pandemic, you see me going live on Facebook for certain days in a row. You reach out to me, you're like, dude, I see you, man. It's about us right now. It's us hustlers that are, in the pandemic. People are gonna shut down and be scared. We're gonna get it, bro. I'm like, yeah, we're gonna get it. Cool, man. Come on my podcast. Let's talk about it. Then you come on my podcast. I explain to you the whole like vision of it. And you're like, yes, yes. And ever since then, all you have done is become the content monster that you've become, man. You have flawlessly executed on every piece of advice that I've given you that I charge companies to implement for them. You have just taken the advice and done it yourself. You are the proud case study of what my book is going to be about, which is you don't need me to do it for you. You can do it yourself. Look at Al Nicoletti doing what he's doing. So, man, it's been a heck of a ride with you, man. And I'm like really proud to see you doing it at such a high level and applying all this stuff and it working so freaking well for you, man.
So does that mean I get a chapter in the book or I get the foreword?
100%. I don't know if you get the foreword out, but you definitely got a chapter in the book. Like you get like a section of a chapter in the book for sure.
Great, man. That's perfect for me. I'll take it. I'll take the slot. But like back up, Pablo, because
Yeah.
we're both from Miami.
Yeah.
You were even a part of many groups down there in Miami, philanthropy,
Correct.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So you found that even speaking and doing all of the content there was powerful. But then you saw Jacksonville as you didn't know at the time, but you come up to Jacksonville and you see that the vision that you had down in Miami, they had over here with Yellowbird
Mm.
and you expanded on it. So being a part of that whole real estate community was a huge part, which would lead into how to get into these inner real estate
Yeah.
groups, even though you don't know anything about real estate. So you didn't know anything
Correct.
about real estate. You
Yeah.
come to these groups, everybody's talking about different niches, multifamily, mortgages, probate, every different thing that you could think of. And
Yep.
then you haven't done anything, but you have a idea how you can help all of us grow the
That's right.
content. So how do people do that when they don't know anything about real estate?
Approach it from a very genuine level, right? I walked into those rooms and I knew that I didn't know anything about real estate and I wasn't trying to fake any kind of funk. I just said, listen, man, I'm here to network. I see a lot of great people here and I want to see how I can help anybody here out, like how I can connect people to each other. Who are you looking for? Can I introduce you to somebody else in the room? And that's it, man. I showed up to serve. And very quickly, I also had something else to say about something else that was important, which was how to network and how to make connections, right? But like it didn't have to be that. Anything that you show up knowing. I have a buddy called Eric Cabral. Kind of had the same thing. He was the top creative and the biggest, he was like the chief creative in one of the biggest pharma companies in the US. He left that because it was sucking his soul, entered real estate networking groups. And the moment he got into the networking groups, he started talking about branding. That's what he knew. And he's like, I don't know anything about real estate, but like, if you need branding advice, I can give you branding advice. And he has a very parallel story to mine up in New Jersey, and now he's killing it too, right? So like, it's showing up and being willing to serve, right? Like being willing to add whatever kind of value you can to the equation that you're a part of. And it doesn't have to be in the expertise of what people are congregating. You can just add from whatever you're good at, add it to the mix, and then offer to help people, right? So that's what happened. And once I showed up doing that, and the next iteration was Kyle and Pat asked me to be in the like ambassadors, and there it was just like a group of us. Everybody was a real estate expert, and Cody was leading a discussion about, all right, man, how can we make this community cool? And I'm like, I got an idea. Oh, I got an idea. I got right because I had been doing this community creation stuff in these networking groups in Miami, man. And that's it. Is show up to add value is the way to get in anywhere. Like, and I can fast forward to say that's the reason why I do a lot of content and why I advise you to do content. Because one of the easiest values that you can have to offer is a stage, right? Is the value of, oh, let me put you on my podcast. Oh, let me interview you and write about you on my blog. Oh, let me do a live in front of all my audience and then repurpose it and spread it around and promote you for a week, right? Like exactly what you're doing. So that's really how it all ties together.
Yeah, and you've been a big proponent about that, right? Repurposing it, pushing it out there, providing value, giving back, and explaining, how does this work, and giving that value back to people is really important for you. So it's amazing to have watched you go from that meeting in Yellowbird and now being the co-host of the Not Your Average Investor Show
Yeah.
and doing what you're amazing at doing, which is being the host, being a personality, and you get this experience and opportunity with Greg.
Yeah.
And Greg's the real estate developer guru with JWB, and you get to watch also and learn from what he does in his business.
Yeah.
So doing what you do and getting in the inner circles isn't all about just diving into real estate. It's getting and learning from people that do it. So you, through Greg, learn all this stuff. You do tons of webinars. Even during the pandemic, you were doing
Mhm.
lives all the time about properties and rental properties. And by doing the podcast, you learned all about this. So how much, like, percentage wise, would you say you've learned working with Greg from watching all of the rentals, the
Mhm.
numbers, the values? A ton, right?
A ton, dude. Yeah, listen, man, I'm not shy about saying that my relationship with Greg has been the most influential relationship that I have created since the moment that I started being friends with Greg, right? Like it has been a profound effect on my life in real estate, big time, right? Like being the host of the Not Your Average Investor Show has me interviewing everybody from former mayors, like what's his name? He's the founder of Gate Petrol. No, he's the ex CEO of Gate Petroleum, who's a former mayor. I'm blanking out on his name. I interviewed him. I interviewed Lori Boyer, like the president of the Downtown Investment Authority, right? Like Daniel Davis, who's like probably going to be mayor soon, and he's the head of the chamber. All the way down from them to interviewing, I would say at this point 30 to 40 to 50 maybe like investors, right? Like people that are literally rental property investors that are coming on and talking about, well, I got into it like this or like that or whatever. Like there's one guy that came on who was the guy, his first investment that wasn't, outside of his 401k, he bought a horse in California. That horse won its first race that it was in, and he went on to be rookie of the year in California. He took that money, the award for rookie of the year, and bought an alpaca farm and, and then won the equivalent of best in show, like, the Mayflower dog show of alpacas for alpacas, and then flipped that, right? Like sold like some alpacas out of that and became a real estate investor. Like the perspective I've gotten to see of the world of investing and asset classes and successful people and exactly how it works in Jacksonville and why it works in Jacksonville. That's one part. The other part is watching how JWB is built and how it operates is a fantastic viewpoint of an incredible business, right? Like it was clear to me when I showed up with them for the first, we're going to do our first, like what I call the audience cultivation charrette, which is where we're designing the content stream. But Greg deliberately asked me, he's like, well, I want you to show up to our Tuesday morning meetings, which is their all staff weekly meeting. I walked into that meeting thinking, fuck, I got to be at a 1 hour fucking staff meeting with 85 people. This sucks. And the moment I got in there, I was captivated, right? Like everybody was glued to each other. And it was very clear to me that they had done something special with culture. And the meeting started with this thing that I love now talking about all the time, because they call it their core values call out. I've implemented it in my business, but they're very clear on their core values. And every like big staff meeting starts off with the ability to stand up and recognize somebody else for executing on one of the core values. You name the core value and you say what the person did. And that clearly was like, oh my God, these guys think at a different level. They built a different level kind of business. This is why they win best place to work every single year. Right. So like, think about it, man. You're incentivizing people to like live the value, to know the values of the company, internalize them so much that they can recognize them in other. And then you're giving them positive encouragement for standing up and public speaking, right? A skill that we can all use to express gratitude and express, like how making other people in the company feel seen for the effort that they've put in. It's genius, right? Like, so seeing that, man, and seeing what they've built, like they've built a really remarkable business, and I'm in awe of it. And it's really just affected how I'm building my business. The real estate education has affected me how I'm investing. I've now closed on 2 rental income properties in the last 6 months and building and buying into Jacksonville because I just see a really, really high future in Jacksonville long term. and yeah, and everything else, right? It's like I now know what a non-recourse loan is. I didn't know what that was like 6 months ago. Like technical terms I learned week by week. It's pretty incredible.
And that's because you got into the inner circles, finding a
Correct.
way to use what you bring to the table to get into an inner circle, even though you knew nothing about real estate. And it's crazy that you talk about not even the real estate side, Pablo, but the business side. I think where a lot of businesses, or it doesn't even have to be real estate, people fail is in their business is they don't have that culture. And that's an incredible experience for you to watch about how JWB instills that with their employees.
Yeah.
Probably they have amazing birthday parties, they have accountability and making sure people do things the right
Yep.
way and stepping up to the plate. And they probably have like weekly meetings in the boardroom to talk about what went wrong, what went good. It's just like little things like that I even think about, because that's where a lot of people go wrong. It's not just the real estate, right? It's also about how do you run your business. I even saw Pat up there on the Yellowbird stage when we went back to connect, June 3rd, and he was talking all about like passion and growth and purpose. And it's like you have to instill those things with your employees in your business. If you don't have that structure at the top, it trickles down and it could be just a mess with everybody. So you watching that has got to be inspiring, especially in real estate.
100%, man. And I love where you're going with this, Al, because I watch a lot of your content, particularly your micro content. And I love the fact that there's a lot of the real estate investors that you bring into this room are talking about core values, and they're talking about marketing, right? Like to me, what I'm starting to really realize is that if you can create an organization that acts and behaves like a good human being, and you can say that message at scale as much as possible, you're going to succeed, right? Like the days of the creep are counted, right? Like there's too much noise in the ecosystem. It's too easy to find out everything, right? So like if you can build a business truly around integrity, truly around what you believe in, and enlist people into the mission of what you believe in, and then tell that story as loud and often as possible to everybody, and have other people tell the same story, it's the formula for success, right? Like that is one of the reasons why I so believe in content. Like I think what I've gotten the privilege to just magnify the magnifying glass onto JWB and everything that they've created. They've always been there. They've just been kind of like been, hiding in plain sight. And now they're having, they've had the two back-to-back biggest quarters that they've ever had, Q4 of 2020 and Q1 of 2021. It's been unbelievable, man. It's been incredible.
And I love the constant content that you're putting out with JWB, constantly planning to go live with Greg. You go live, you talk about the properties, so
Yeah.
much to talk about it. But let's talk about this, the relationship flywheel, the
Yeah.
ultimate marketing move to your investing business. Tell us all about it. How did you come up with this relationship flywheel, and how is it impacting people in their investing business?
The Relationship Flywheel is the Not Your Average Investor Show, and the Al Nicoletti Show are both case studies of the Relationship Flywheel, right? So if anybody wants to know what the Relationship Flywheel is, it's an internet talk show where you strategically interview and bring on the people that you want to be known to know, right? The people that you want to be guilty by association with, that bring value to the people that you're trying to serve. Create that connection so that Neil and Gina and Malachi and Dom all feel like they're hanging out with me and you right now, and drive that relationship, four ways in between you and your guest, you and the audience, your guest and the audience to themselves, right? So like, and then repurpose that content in a strategic manner, right? Like in a way that you take this 1 hour call and it becomes your podcast, it becomes your YouTube show, it becomes a YouTube short under 10 minutes that people are going to watch in short form. It becomes like a lessons learned email. It becomes an SEO optimized blog, like the stuff that we talk about. And then it also becomes the 5 best clips of me and Al talking about how good each other look, and how, like something that is going to give somebody some advice on real estate, right? Like maybe the clip about me saying the way that you get in is by being of service and bringing in your niche, right? Like that is JP, cut that out. That's a perfect that's a perfect micro content clip right there, right? And this one too. So repurposing it over and over across the internet. That's the relationship flywheel. How I got to it, Al? when I started creating these shows, these young professional groups in Miami, you mentioned it earlier, I wasn't doing any content, right? But we had this formula of enlisting people into what we wanted them to do, and we had no leverage on them. And it, we weren't their boss. It was a volunteer organization. Everybody's busy. So how do we get people to volunteer for us? We started creating these meetings where the meeting to plan what we were going to do was being held in the boardroom of somebody that was on the board of the charity, right? So people on the boards of charities are generally big ballers downtown, right? Like they're the people that are moving and shaking downtown. So we're recruiting young professionals so that board member would come, show up, give us a story of their life and how they got to where they want to be and what they would do if they were 28 years old right now, and how to be the CEO of Baptist Hospital or whatever, right? And then we'd have a little Q&A, we make a little rapport with them, and then we would have our meetings, right? All right, who's planning the happy hour this week? Who's got the volunteer event next month, right? Like stuff like that. And I started realizing we started using that formula to recruit people. And then when we'd want to have an event, we'd use the same exact formula. We'd put people on stage to talk about something interesting that would recruit people to come, that then we would pitch what we wanted to get people involved with. And I started seeing that the charity, the cause that I was having was kind of like my stage, right? And then at one point I felt stagnated in my career, and my CEO invited me to speak in a panel for smart cities in front of the Economic Development Agency of Miami. He got invited. He didn't want to go last minute, so they sent me last minute. And I get there and I share the stage with the head of Latin America for Cisco Systems and the head of the Smart Cities Initiative for the World Bank, and me, right? So I get there, man, and I share the stage with these guys, and I just spit my truth, unprepared, in front of like 85 people in front of the Economic Development Agency of Miami. And when I come off the stage, there's a line of like 6 people deep waiting to talk to me, right? And as I'm like going through these people, I'm like, everybody here thinks I'm more important than I am, right? Like, what's going on here? And what I came to understand immediately was that being on stage in front of an audience gives you a certain level of credibility, right? Like seeing somebody up there makes you think, oh, they're like Jake and Neil and Gina are seeing me right now on the screen. They're like, oh, he must have some sort of value to be on the Al Nicoletti show, right? Like you're on, that's what the brain says. And then if you can be guilty by association with people on stage, it magnifies it, right? So like if somebody thinks that you're a beast, like I think, and they see me on the screen side by side with you, then they're like, oh, Pablo must be as smart as Al, or like he must have some kind of value, right? So I understood that immediately, and I thought, how else can I use this trick? And that's what led me. First, I started having events for developers down in Miami and inviting my young professionals to it and putting them on stage with politicians on the boards of my charities and stuff like that. The next iteration was inside of a business, hosting these like Zoom calls where we would all kind of help each other out and then magnify it to like the Facebook group of this e-commerce business and cut it up and use it for our digital advertising, right? People having their problem solved. And then I just kept iterating through it, man, until realizing that the answer is this. If you can plan out what do we talk about, Al, right? When you wanted to produce the Al Nicoletti show, we said, what's important to the people that you're trying to connect with, right? You're trying to connect with real estate investors, real estate professionals, and who can open more doors to more of those people, right? Like heads of groups, heads of associations, people that are making content out there in the community, right? So if you create a show where you are talking about real estate concepts with these gatekeepers that you are trying to serve, that can open the keys, that can open the doors for you, then you're going to have this constant kind of like flywheel of relationships that are coming into your life that you're adding value to on the front end, and you're promoting them to everybody else while people get to tune in and feel like they get an hour with Al every week, while you're only spending 1 hour with the 8 people that are on with us right now, right? It's only 1 hour of your time. And then you get to repurpose it and spread it out so that when you are tagging people and you are writing about them, their audience that is there sees them and they're like, oh my God, my friend's on TV. And what are they on? Oh, the Al Nicoletti show. Oh, the Al Nicoletti show must be interesting. Right. And then they start tuning into you. And it's just creates this flywheel that brings more and more people in your life until after a couple of shows, you walk into a networking event like Yellowbird and everyone's like, Al Nicoletti's here. It's the fucking Beatles. Right. Like you just went through that. Right?
Pretty much just went through that. Yeah. No joke. Which that's a whole other thing, right? Like that's the power of what it's done.
That's
right?
what it is.
And so you and I will walk in there and it's like, somebody told me the other day, they're like, I feel like I know you. And I'm like, I don't know you. And it was like they see me everywhere. And so there's a power to content producing and repurposing the content. Now, true story for everybody watching out there, it was almost named the Rainmaker Real Estate Show
That's right.
when it first started because Pablo took so much time with me to figure out everything for this whole show. I mean, it has not gotten to this point without a lot of brain power, thoughts, meetings, and Pablo from the beginning was helping me with everything. So thank you again, Pablo, for this whole thing.
Can we give a shout out to JP too?
JP, of course, JP. We got to make micro content. Thank you, JP, micro content up there.
Yeah, yeah. JP, make yourself a piece of micro content, JP.
Yeah, JP. There you go. Make a quote card. Put your picture
Yeah,
there.
yeah. The
Uh,
hero of both of our shows. Go ahead.
There you go. Yeah, for sure. And I mean, it's been amazing what it's done. But talk to us a little bit about this. So, on a basic level, how should people even network, Pablo? Like when
Yeah,
you go into a networking event, the mindset, like when you go in there,
yeah,
I know you don't go in there going, I'm going to go talk to the same people again, and network with the same people. I want to go meet with either different people and figure out what's their problem, how can I solve it,
yeah,
and really connect with them later, right? I mean, you see the same people there, but I know there also is something in the back of your mind going, I want to work this room like crazy.
yeah.
What's the proper way to network? Like, how do you really maximize the power
Sure.
of networking?
Uh, Jake Hargrove puts ride scooters. So I met Jake at a conference the last 5 minutes of opening night. And we walk outside, we're like, we should go get something. And they had those like bird scooters outside. So Jake and I immediately created a scooter gang with this other guy, Doug, and we've been friends ever since. So that's a good way to network if you
Boom.
got scooters available. A shared experience, man. Like that goes a long way. But listen, man, the right way to network, I haven't broken this down in a while, man. But when you are walking into a room to network, number one, the right way to network is authentically, right? The first thing that you want to walk in and be yourself and be genuinely curious about other people and understand that everybody in that room, everybody that you cross paths with, has done something different than you've done at some point in your life. And therefore, there's something for you to learn from that person. And your job is to ask questions and be curious about them until you figure out what that special thing is about them that they think that they're awesome at, that they're also really good at, and that they love talking about, right? So that's the goal of every single interaction that you have in networking. And if you continue to do that, you're going to grow a great network, right? So tactically speaking, it's all about reps, man. Like it really is just like how many conversations can you get into and practice that muscle of wonder and curiosity about the person standing in front of you while paying attention and asking good questions and like adding to it, right? And keeping them talking about themselves until you find somewhere that you can really be of value to them, right? Like sometimes it's just the asking of the questions and having them work it out, right? Like that's often all you need, right? But as you do that with more people, you will understand how different people tick more and more, and you will be able to recontextualize something that somebody was dealing with that they told you about at a networking event with something that somebody's dealing with that you'll now be able to serve them up, right? So like the idea is to fact find, to interview everybody that you meet and try to get them to talk about themselves until you understand something deep and meaningful about them that you can recommend to somebody else, right? And you'll continue to build that up, and the more you do that, the more valuable you become to the next person that you talk to, right? When you walk into a room, just be cognizant of the fact that everybody that's there is looking to meet somebody, right? Like there is no reason to like feel bad about like saying hi to somebody, tapping somebody on the shoulder so that they turn around, interrupting a three-person conversation, or just be like, hey, I just want to be a part of this conversation, right? Like everybody's looking for the same thing, right? So a couple of really low-hanging fruits if you are shy or you're nervous is anytime you're walking into a networking event, there's always a freaking registration line. Always. There's always a table where people in line to register. Take that opportunity to introduce yourself to the person in front of you and the person behind you immediately, right? Just to get that rep in so that you don't feel like, oh my God, who am I going to talk to tonight, right? Like walk in with a friend. Other person that's easy to talk to, I call him the floater or her the floater, right? Every networking room has somebody that has crossed the room once or twice, kind of looking at their phone, kind of looking up, kind of pretending like they're busy. That person is dying for someone to introduce themselves to them, right? Like if you introduce yourself to that person, boom, you've already done somebody a huge favor and you're like their hero and they're already your friend. All you got to do is get them kind of talking and then do that. I always, when I'm in these conversations, I always err on the side of talking to one or two or three people for a super long time and having an awesome conversation where I get to really know them and they remember me, than like, oh, I got to meet 10 people tonight, right? Like you just got to, it's a long game, right? So like you're just showing up more and more to the same rooms, and the more people you know, the easier it's going to get, and the more you're going to be able to be that interconnector person, man. So that's kind of it, is approach with that mentality, and you will always be able to introduce yourself someone to an align or talk to the floater to break the seal, and that gets you on your first conversation, and you're good to go from there.
I think you need to bring this segment back from, I know you've talked about it a long time ago, but do you know why I asked this question?
What was that?
Because we're all going back in person. And when I
I
went back
know.
to Yellowbird, I almost forgot how to network.
I know. I
You
thought
know,
about it.
it's
Yeah.
weird, right? Because for you and I, we're naturals at connecting with people and meeting with people, but we haven't been doing that in a while. So it's almost like we're getting back to that with things reopening. And it's like a simple concept and simple understanding of somebody like you understand this, explaining it to people that don't know how to do it is
Yeah.
it's incredible. So
Yeah. I gotta re-release the networking superchargers. So what I'm doing is like week and a half, I'm like reshooting a lot of it, more contextualized to content. But even the old videos of it, like if you go to my YouTube right now, you see my series of networking superchargers that is all like 36 tips and tricks on how to like walk into a room and network. Yeah, you're right. I need to re-release that.
I know you have to. I mean, I
Yeah.
feel like I need to brush up on my skills with networking.
Yeah. And speaking of like breaking the seal again, man, I told you I was at that cryptocurrency conference in Orlando. I went full ham, dude. Like I was just like, oh my God, a room full of people. I want to meet everyone. Like it was amazing.
Well, let's talk about that, right? I mean,
Sure.
we're right there, crypto and community. You went to the Miami Crypto Conference. I saw it on TV. I'm not really into crypto, so I was like, crypto. You told me you're at the crypto conference. I'm like, get it, man. You gotta, go network, because I know you're probably not just going there because of crypto. You know that there's an opportunity, that those are a lot of business people. They have businesses that may need the assistance with building their content and stuff. So
Yeah.
I know the idea behind that. But I know you're also into crypto. So talk to us about your hot take on the crypto community and moving that movement in the community.
Yeah. So, a couple corrections. I did not go to the Miami crypto conference. It was the one in Orlando right after, right? So, supposedly the Miami crypto thing was like the zoo Miami, like the crypto Coachella, and then the Orlando one was like the B2B crypto conference, which actually suited really well, which is
I
cool.
sue Miami because of you. That's why.
I know. I trust me. I wish I would have been at the Miami one. So I went there out. Crypto hasn't really been on my radar very much, except when Gary Vee launched his NFT project, right? Like Gary Vee's been talking a lot about NFTs, and NFTs are tied to crypto. And then Gary Vee launched this NFT project that really opened my eyes to how you can create social currency around cryptocurrency. And then I'm also part of this community called Serial Marketers, where I just had the founder of the community on my podcast. I haven't released it yet, but he launched the CMO coin. And that's like a cool, like, hey man, if you self-identify with marketing as being cool and you consider yourself a marketer, like, and you buy the CMO coin, it means that you're a member of this community and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, oh, okay, I get it. Right. Like I'm starting to see the idea that crypto and blockchain is going to be tied to the future of community creation, because you can create a combination of like a membership card, a cool club VIP access pass, a point system of rewards on it, a how long have you been a part of this badge, what have you done for the community kind of like ledger, right? So I see the future of being able to launch a coin for the stuff that I believe in, which is the community creation for business development stuff that I believe in, as a discipline. And if I can make that discipline interesting enough and I can create events around it and a content stream around it, then a coin that I launch relative to that discipline that I want to call the buddy coin as of right now, because it's the community thing, creation thing, then that can have an intrinsic value of everything that I just said, right? Like, if you think about in a very natural sense, like, have you ever been like a fan of an artist like really early on? Like, did you ever discover a band that you're like, yeah, man, I heard about him before everybody else, right? Like that coin creates the ability to do that for anything that you're going to make cool, right? So that's kind of what I went to this conference seeking, is like, how do I create that? So I went there looking for that, looking for the logistics on that. And what I found is, the crypto community is, number one, I was there in the green building industry when it went from like Birkenstocks to suits, and it got real profitable real quick to like do anything in relation to green building, and if you can sell it, you could do real well with it. I see crypto as it's kind of in that space. I found a community of people that were, one part hardcore investor guys that just are like, how do I make some money on this? There's another part that were, you know, buck the system, punk rock, like this is gonna bring down governments, like libertarian anarchism, right? Like that group. And then there was like a bunch of social justice people of like, this evens the field. This removes more gatekeepers from the equation. And I think that's a really, really interesting mix. And the technology itself, while I think it does have this power of buckling a lot of systems, because it's going to disrupt stuff, right? Like the same way that social media has buckled the media industry, I think crypto is going to buckle certain hierarchies, right? Title companies are gonna eat shit with crypto, right? Like they're
Well,
yeah.
that's a
So
bold prediction.
yeah, yeah. So title search, right, won't be necessary once you can tie it to a blockchain and have it be a clean ledger of sorts, right? So whoever unlocks that technology first is going to create the future kind of platform for that stuff. Because what it is, it's a very accountable way to track stuff that people just can't mess with,
Well,
right?
back up a second. I can't let you go on yet
Yeah,
because
please.
title companies are a huge part of real estate.
Mhm.
So, explain that. Go deeper about that. Like,
Yeah.
where is crypto going to affect that you think it's going to affect the title industry?
Yeah, sure. So it's not necessarily crypto, but it's blockchain, right?
Blockchain.
So when people talk about blockchain, what it is, they describe it as a ledger, right? It's essentially this like record of where something has been at every moment, and what it has done at every moment from the beginning of time that can't be corrupted because it's fragmented and spread out across all these different things, right? So if you start exchanging real estate on blockchain, and now you know exactly where that title has been always. Like there is no way to mess that up, right? And so title trace, title insurance, all that type of stuff is gonna get disrupted. I don't know if it's gonna go away or what it's gonna look like, but once people start exchanging stuff there, then from there on out, title tracking will be flawless, and there won't be all this inefficiency in the system. So you can apply that to everything else, to supply chain, to anything else that you need to track across a life cycle, right? Which is where the currency is as well too. You can apply this technology to all of it. So it has this like web 3.0 kind of feel where now everything that's going to be a digital asset, you're always going to know where it has been, and everything that's a physical asset will have a digital asset paired to it so that you will always know where it's been. Right? Like somebody like every orange you've ever seen in the world has a RFID on a blockchain. So when you get your Whole Foods orange juice, you know exactly what oranges were in there.
That's
So
crazy.
yeah, so that's kind of what the underlying technology is going to do. And then, there's a discussion of these things being currencies, which at the end of the day, it's become a store of value, right? So like at some point we decided that gold was valuable and announced, a bullion of gold was worth a certain amount. And then now like we deal in like ounces of gold, right? So like Bitcoin is like the bullion of gold based on that same kind of perceived value, which really what value does gold have? Nothing, right? So you can make a necklace out of it. So
The whole electricity goes out. Then, I mean, you have a coin.
yeah, I guess you have something you can write with if if the world ends. I don't
Yeah.
know,
Or
or like
trade.
etch into a tree or something, right? But so Bitcoin is this thing that got created. They're not gonna, there's only a finite amount that you can make of Bitcoins, so it's never gonna, there's never gonna be less, and it has an inherent value attributed to it now, right? So, just like gold or petroleum or whatever, where you're just like, all right, so if there's only this much more left in the world, it's going to have this kind of value, and at different times, like a Mickey Mantle rookie card has no real value, right? But when the economy's kicking ass and people are buying, like something special's happening in baseball, it has a lot more value. And then when the economy's sucking shit and people aren't buying like trinkets, then it has way less value, right? So it's kind of going to be like that, right? It becomes like a Babe Ruth rookie card or something like that.
I know you're a huge fan of Gary Vee, so like I don't know, is this what he's been getting into with like NFTs? Like, does this have anything to do
Yeah.
with that? And I know you've been talking about that. You posted about how like you're like, that's the next thing. Like, if we
Mhm.
start buying into like this whole thing, talk to us. Like, what is that? Is that tie in with blockchain?
Yeah. So NFTs are a way to make something digital scarce, right? And it's done through blockchain, right? So if like the meme of the girl walking away from a burning building, that there's like me thinking my parents are home or whatever, right? Like whatever that meme card is, right? Like somebody can make that original one into an NFT, and now you have the original one, the same as like you have the Mona Lisa at the Louvre, and everybody else has just a print, right? So that's the basic underlying behind the NFT. But now what Gary's done is Gary tied it to community and to future deliverables, right? So he created all these characters like empathy elephant and patient panda and like all these like different like little characters that he created, and he released them as NFT. So he released them as these little artworks that you can buy, kind of like if you bought the first edition of the Gary V trading cards. But each of these NFTs, right, the lowest level one has a ticket to VCon, which is a conference he's going to put on for the next 3 years, right? So it comes with that. So that attaches some like physical value to it. So let's say I, the original ones, like the lowest price ones you can get for like half an Ethereum, which at the time when they sold was like $2,000, almost three, between two and $3,000. So like ideally I could be thinking to myself, I'm buying this NFT because I'm just saying to myself, I'm just paying $1,000 a year for the Gary V conference, and it's going to be a exclusive thing, right? So he added this like extra value to it, but then he added a bunch of other value pieces to other ones. Like he's got this thing called the gift goat, where when you have that NFT, you get tickets to the conference every year, plus you get 4 gifts a year from Gary V. Who knows? Is he going to send you a Gary V varsity jacket that there was only going to be like 20 in the world of, and that's going to be worth some money? Who knows, right? But like, it's his experience. He tied one to like ping pong Kalong. You get to play ping pong with him for half an hour once a year. Like he's got this like dinner deer. So like you get to have dinner with him once, like stuff like that. So different ones have like different levels of access to him. And then that creates the front value of it that isn't just the art piece, right? Like these experiences have value because people pay a lot of money to eat with Gary Vee or to get behind the scenes or take a selfie with him, right? And so he tied that to the front end. But now what he's working on is taking those characters and like he's taking meetings with like DreamWorks. Like, oh, am I going to make these characters into the next Toy Story? Right. So he's going to create this IP about these characters. And he talks about it like making the Snorks. So if he creates like a cartoon series about these characters that ends up being as like relevant as the Snorks, and you owned the original print of the NFT or whatever, now it has this other like legendary kind of value. So it like I just described some crazy shit, but like what I'm describing is something that is completely limitless, right? Like if you can tie scarcity to something, and you can use that thing that's scarce to provide experiences and access and social currency to people, sky's the limit, man. And for somebody who all he's ever thought about is social currency, it's just very interesting to me.
So how are we going to tie that into real estate?
Oh man, NFTs. So like I said, I think real estate is going to be issued in the blockchain, right? Like you buy a house, like you can get like some kind of electronic NFT or whatever that symbolizes that you own this house, and then now your title is there and it'll always be tied to it. That's one thing. Outside of that is anything that clears up ownership, right? Like and passing through hands, and I it can affect every kind of contract ever, because they have this ability to create these smart contracts that have all these things that kick in automatically, and you don't have to be like overlooking the contract, right? Like you might be able to cut some kind of real estate deal that's would have been super hard, where you bring in 4 people, you tie it to this like this ledger and tie it to this title, and in perpetuity you can own a piece of that real estate, and every time it's sold, maybe you get a cut of it on the back end, generationally for some, like you can set stuff up that's really complex generationally, that just happens. So I hadn't really thought of it that way, but that's one way that it could affect real estate.
So what happens when we get on a show? You start brainstorming.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know anything about the NFTs. I've seen them talk about it on TV. I've seen people talk about how it's going to be the next thing. So if anybody is interested out there about how you can use that and leverage it in your business, connect with Pablo. Pablo, we have all the chyrons that we keep posting out there so people can find you, your Instagram, your LinkedIn, your website, your podcast, everything out there. So everybody will check you out. And Pablo, another thing that you wanted to talk about is the outlook on the Jacksonville market as a non-expert that plays an expert on TV.
Yeah,
Talk to us about this.
that's the hook point, right? Again, I'm the host of the Not Your Average Investor Show. Of like all of my experience is based on just like third party learning from people talking about Jacksonville and people investing in Jacksonville and people operating businesses at a high level in Jacksonville. But I just wanted to speak about it outside of the show, man. Like I am really really bullish on Jacksonville. I moved here from Miami 3 years ago for the same reasons that people were moving here from other cities, right? Like this place, I knew that I was going to save a bunch of money on cost of living. I knew that my quality of life was going to go up because I was going to be going to the beach all the time. What I didn't know was that I wasn't going to be giving up on opportunity, right? Like the level of opportunity in this city has far exceeded my expectations. And quite frankly, it was going to be hard to replace my network in Miami, man. Like I didn't know who I was going to make friends with in Jacksonville that would be as like playing on such a grand stage as the people that I had gotten connected to in Miami, and that's exceeded my expectations, right? Like there is a ton of talent in this city, and a ton of like people doing things really intelligently, and this city. What I've learned being on the Not Your Average Investor Show, it's an incredibly well-positioned economy, right? Like it's a very well-balanced mix of government, which with the naval stations here and the military here, logistics, that's a very healthy industry that's not going anywhere as long as Amazon is relevant, right? Healthcare, another recession-proof industry that is always adding value. Finance and fintech, another really, really big growing sector. And there is these other parts that are coming down the pike, right? The JTA is creating this autonomous vehicle corridor that's going to serve as the testing ground for the autonomous vehicle economy for cities. Jacksonville is going to have that, right?
Here
So
in
here,
Jacksonville.
yeah, here.
Really?
So yeah, so that's going to spill over into like, dude, do you want to work on smart cars? You want to work, like I would be surprised that if this goes the way it's supposed to go, that Tesla's department of governmental sales wouldn't be here. You know what I'm saying? Like that level of stuff. Like how do you create autonomous vehicle economy for the public sector is all going to be pioneered here. I think that's really relevant. There's this other there's a I just found this out, right? There's a space base, like a space runway, like an airport, Cecil Airport Field has this like extraordinarily long runway. And it's the only runway on the entire eastern seaboard that's cleared for horizontal space exploration takeoff, right? So space exploration right now as a commercial endeavor is starting to hit its tipping point, right? Like it's starting to tip. And we are the only place that has that, right? So just think about the boon that NASA and the space economy has been for just Melbourne, that's a middle of nowhere city, and with the only industry there. So imagine adding that to the fold of Jacksonville, right? So, and then you get COVID that accelerated all these trends, right? Like everything that I knew but I feared, this idea of you can work from anywhere and connect with people all over the world from anywhere because internet, right? Like that's not going away. People realize that that's real during COVID. People realize that they don't have to live in like cold weather climates. They don't have to live in the Northeast to be close to some stuff that you can be affecting while, let's face it, out like it's freaking glorious outside. It's June in Florida. Everywhere else in Florida, it's like hot as balls. Like I just took a walk with the dog and I was like, this is beautiful, man. Like I feel like I'm in fucking Southern California. Like it's amazing, right? The weather here, the beaches, the connection to the open spaces, all that stuff is becoming more and more relevant. All the while, there's this downtown that is right about to flourish, right? Like when you get 10,000 people in an urban density, that's when like developers start investing in stuff without any incentives, right? And Jacksonville's downtown is real close to that. It's got this amazing stock of buildings that are all along a waterfront and have an urban park that's coming, this Emerald Trail, kind of like the Beltline in Atlanta, or Miami just opened the Underline, or the High Line in New York, right? Like we have that coming to the urban center. And then we have players like JWB and a handful of others that are seeing that coming and betting on the future of downtown in order to speed up that point where there are no more incentives needed, right? So like I just see this like powder keg of good stuff happening inside this market, and yet it's still below the national median. The average home price is below the national median. So I'm just really long on Jacksonville investment as somebody who moved here for the trend that has only been accelerated and has seen it coming more. Lived a very similar period of a city in the last 10 years in Miami of like the urban center becoming ultra valuable, and, you know, being able to come here and invest and grow a career in under 3 years because of the bountiful opportunity that exists and the people that are here that enable it. Like I'm just super impressed by it. And I think that if I had money, I would also be, you know, if I like I invest in Jacksonville is kind of what I'm getting at. Like I see anybody that is a part of this community right now, like get your hands dirty, man. Like go like start attending like civic stuff, volunteer for a charity, like start growing roots in this community, because the top end of what's coming is going to be built by this generation of people that are right now affecting it, that are in their like 20s, 30s, 40s and 50s. It's going to be awesome.
I had no idea what you meant by the hook point before, but now I totally get it. You know exactly what's coming with the Jacksonville market, Pablo. You see it, and really the Florida market. I
Yeah.
mean, you see what's happening in Melbourne with like Blue Origin, and then you have SpaceX with Elon Musk. That's blowing up down there, right? Because NASA
Mhm.
isn't really doing that. You have private companies coming in. Now you even have, because of the pandemic, you have private companies coming down into Jacksonville. You
Yeah.
have they're coming here, right?
Yeah.
And you
Yeah.
have the inventory, the lowest it's ever been in the Jacksonville market, like
Yeah.
ever. That's because everybody's like coming here. And that's because there's amazing things that are happening. The communities are being revitalized, places are being, everything's just getting better.
Yeah.
And I think you see that, and you see Florida as a spot that's just going to keep growing. And when I came up here to Jacksonville, I mean, we're both from Miami, but I came up here to Jacksonville. I didn't know what was in Jacksonville. Now that I'm here, I see it all over the news that Jacksonville is like the it spot to be. It's the
Yep.
hottest market. It's one of the hottest in the US.
It's the second hottest in the US after like Austin or something like that. And listen, I want to put a clear stake on the ground. Yeah, I think Florida is crushing it. There is no place in Florida that I'm higher on than Jacksonville. Like I just don't see the limitation of this place, right? Like I think Miami is too expensive, right? Like Miami has the biggest differential between cost of living and wages in the United States. And it only got way worse when all the tech bros moved there, right? So if you're super rich, Miami's really fun, but it's too expensive to keep, you know, growing like this, and like for the average person to create prosperity there, right? Like I look at Orlando, I feel like Orlando is, you know, they now have this like burgeoning tech sector, which is really great, and I hope that that continues going because UCF is turning into a beast there. But they're so heavily tied to tourism, and they're so heavily tied to hospitality, right? Like that's not a recession proof thing. That's not a pandemic proof thing, right? Like that's going to get heavily affected. And you know, and then there's Tampa and St. Pete. Tampa and St. Pete are wonderful, right? Like I'm a fan of theirs, but they don't have the logistics advantage. Like I think being at the top of the state is really huge. And then if you multiply it by the threat of sea level rise and global warming and all this stuff, Tampa, Miami, all those places are below the Lake Okeechobee kind of area. That's going to get really heavily affected by being on top of an aquifer, right? So like as the aquifer starts getting salinated and water starts coming up, those are the first places that are going to get really affected, while Jacksonville is not on that porous limestone, right? So if I look at it in like a 10-year, 20-year, 30-year window of all these macro trends that are happening, I just see Jacksonville as the most bulletproof. And I don't know, man. Like just the microcosm of the ability to surf and be close to the ocean is something that, like every Prudential Life commercial you see is some old dude with gray hair about to go paddle out in some big wave, right? Like it's like a symbol of wealth and lifestyle. Those are those are the guys that I'm actually surfing with every morning, and they're like UNF professors and engineers and lawyers, because here in Jacksonville you can still afford that really high quality of life lifestyle without needing to be a tech boy billionaire or whatever, right? Like it's just that there's just still plenty of space to go.
Incredible. I love how you kept up on all this. Like I mean, I'm always working. I'm not really seeing like all of this that's happening, but you're always out there in the community seeing this happen. And I love it. I love you sharing your insight. Pablo, for everybody out there, how can they connect with you, and who are you looking to connect with and have reach out to you?
How can you connect with me? If you want to do business, you can go to my website, connectwithpablo.com. All my stuff is there, connectwithpablo.com. If you want to do business with me, what I do is produce these types of internet talk shows that drive revenue and create community in your clientele. It's not cheap. It's like 7,500 bucks to 10,000 bucks a month, but it's done for you and it is sustainable growth for your business. That will set sales records the same way we're doing at JWB. So if you want a really high level content strategy that's going to fill your pipeline, go to be the stage.live, and that's how I'd like to help you. Apart from that, I got my book coming out, which is this methodology, the stuff that Al's been working on, right? Like what he's doing. There's going to be a section in the book about Al, because Al has been clearly the success case of everything that I espouse without me actually doing it for him. He's done it himself. He's just acted on the advice. So I think anybody could do it, especially if you're as smart and cool as Al. But I would love for you to go to my website and sign up for my mailing list, and I'll give you a free copy of the book when it comes out. I'll send it to you. Right? Like my mission is to prove that community creation is the future of business development. And I want to give everybody this formula of the relationship flywheel. This is the future of business development. We are on this world where nobody wants to talk to your salesperson. Like people expect to know everything they need to know about your business currently before they hop on a call with anybody to convince them of anything. Like everything from dating to B2C, everything is going that way. So if your business is not creating an easy, frictionless path to interact with people that know you and that like you and that trust you, then you're going to get left behind, right? So I want to share that with the world. Just sign up for my email list. I'll send it to you.
And I'll tell everybody out there, even if it was setting up a phone call or meeting with Pablo, a consult, just to see where you are with what you're doing and how it can fit in your world of content and media, it is worth every penny. I love talking to Pablo. Every time I meet with him, I learn more. I feel like I go into that meeting, I like know a lot, and then I leave and I'm like, I'm so far behind. And the reason is because he helps inspire you. He helps figure out where you're at with your game, because everybody's got their own style. I got my own style. Pablo's got his own style. We have different ways of speaking. We have different ways of doing content. Everybody has their way, and he is ingenious when it comes to figuring out how you can do what you do. So, Pablo, thank you so much again. Find him on Facebook, find him on YouTube. We have all the channels there. Find him on Instagram. And of course, check out his podcast on iTunes and Spotify, The Chief Executive Connector. And don't forget, if you want to learn more about rental property and real estate in general and creating wealth, make sure you check out the Not Your Average Investor Show. Co-host Pablo and co-host Greg Cohen, they put together something great every week. So make sure you check it out. Hey, man, loved it. Thank you so much again. I mean, again, thank you for all the help that you've done for me with all of this in the beginning and throughout. JP, you're the man. I appreciate it.
Man.
You get another micro clip just for that.
Yeah.
And a quote.
Al, man, thanks for having me on, buddy. Like I look at you and I beam with joy and pride, and I love seeing you doing so well, man. I'm so impressed with how well you're executing on this stuff. I want to give a shout out to Joan Nicoletti. Is that Mama
Oh,
Nicoletti right
Joanne.
there?
Yeah, your mom's watching.
Is it Joan or Joanne?
Joanne.
You are fantastic, Joanne. You have birthed this animal here that I love very dearly. So great job mothering. He talks about you often, and it goes down to Miami to see you. You should be very proud of your son. And thanks for this gift to the world that is Al Nicoletti, man. Al, I'm your biggest fan.
I love it, man. You should have seen her in the beginning when we were figuring out the name and like what we were doing. She's like, nah. And then she was like, she heard some of the other things, was like, boom, done. So she's been there from the beginning. So love it, Pablo. Thank you so much, man. So yeah, man. All right, everybody. So if you want more content like this, make sure you check out the Al Nicoletti page, the business page under Al Nicoletti, the profile. I got everything, Pablo. I can go through the whole list, right? I got the YouTube channel under Al Nicoletti. It's like a cadence. We talk about that. You can find me on iTunes and Spotify on the Al Nicoletti Show. I got all the guests and all the content that's out there. JP and Pablo helping me push out the micro content all over Facebook. I got the full episodes. Cody Adams with the distribution. Love Cody. So I mean, I'm actually doing like a thank you for my whole marketing
You
team,
should
right?
do it. You
Michael
should do
Williams
it.
is out there for all the studio
Yeah.
production. I'm
Yeah.
doing my credentials right now.
I
So
like it. Nathan Ruff on the studio design.
Nathan
Beautiful
Roth
looking
for
studio.
Nathan, thank you so much. So everybody, I will see you next time on the Al Nicoletti Show. Pablo, thank you so much. See you next time.